X2, one of the most influential coasters in this industry, the coaster that caused Arrow's bankruptcy. A coaster that is widely regarded as one of the most intense coasters ever built. But was this worth the cost it came at? I'll answer that question in this video, but first I'll try and convey the insanity of this coaster and give my detailed opinions of it, as part of a series in which I review my top 20 coasters. X2 is my 18th favourite coaster, and actually started its journey as X, a 175 foot tall, 3,610 foot long, 76 miles per hour Arrow 4D coaster. These impressive stats combined with the fact that it was a daring prototype gave it a price tag of $50 million US, and unfortunately in its early life the coaster was riddled with issues, delaying its opening from 2001 to the 2002 season. X2 is intimidating as you're forced to drive past its huge black and red structure when driving to the park. When it first opened it sported a yellow and pink colour scheme which was quite frankly disgusting, but luckily it was repainted to the current colour scheme for the 2008 season. This $10 million upgrade also entailed the commission of new S&S trains which utilised pneumatic restraints, and also entailed new fire effects and audio on the lift as well. X2 always has a constant long line, which meant I could only unfortunately get one ride in it, and I didn't get the best experience, so take this review with a grain of salt, as I have heard that the experience can differ greatly from row to row. The boarding experience on this coaster is actually quite interesting. Firstly, it has lockers by the station, which depending on the way you look at it can either be a blessing or a curse. While it does unfortunately cost some money, it is convenient that it's in the station instead of before the actual queue line. So the restraints on this coaster are actually very interesting. It comprises of two halves of an over-the-shoulder restraint which are pulled together to form a complete over-the-shoulder restraint, with a vertical gap in between the two parts of the restraint. I know this isn't the best description, but these restraints are so unique and hard to explain. When the train dispatches, you actually travel backwards around a 180-degree turn, while the seats sway back and forth. Towards the end of the turn, the seats rotate so that you're lying on your back, facing the rest of the park, which grants an impressive view, and you remain in that position throughout the duration of the 175 foot tall lift hill. This builds suspense as you can't be sure how close you are to the top, and the uncertainty of your position makes the lift hill feel taller than it actually is. When the train reaches the apex of the lift hill, it begins a shallow descent. The coaster picks up some speed, all the while the seats are facing towards the sky. The train then rises up again, and the seats flip you so that you're facing straight down the immense 215 foot drop. You are completely disoriented as the train quickly builds up speed, making this drop one of the most intense ever built. Just before you reach the ground, the train inverts, giving a weird moment of hang time, which further adds to the pandemonium of forces experienced on this first drop alone. This drop is absolutely insane, and you cannot tell how far through the drop you are when going down it, and most of the element is just a blur as you're yanked towards the ground. You then begin to feel the positives of the first valley while lying on your back, which feels quite similar to a pretzel loop actually. Then the train levels out again so that you're returned to the normal upright position. The intensity of the first valley is also increased by the fact that you're travelling backwards, and you continue to travel backwards as you rise up into the first inside Raven turn. As you climb up the first half of this element, the trains are swinging back and forth in a mechanical fashion, which can lead to some discomfort, but for others it can actually add to the insanity. When you reach the top you're in a flying position, but unlike actual graceful flying coasters, this feels much more raucous as you dive out of the first Raven turn, hurtling down the rest of this element. The seats are then briefly returned to the upright position, but then the seats rotate even more as you enter the large hill. At this point the train begins its violent flip. It's hard to explain the forces felt during this element as it's unlike any other coaster, but all I can say is that it's aggressive. As you reach the peak of this airtime hill you've already completed a rapid somersault. The train then descends while the seats shuffle back and forth, and this following section of the ride could be considered a dead spot, but that is only relative to the absurd belligerence of the rest of this coaster. The train is suspended under the track as you slowly navigate a bank turn. This was a brief moment to recollect before the finale of this coaster. When exiting the turn, the train traverses down a downward slope, in which the coaster seems to pick up so much speed which it had just lost while navigating the previous turn. You then reach the shallow valley and the train starts travelling upwards. The train then twists through a fly-to-lie. This is perhaps the most disorienting moment of the coaster, as you are rotating on two axes. The train begins the element by twisting the seats forward, causing them to almost invert. Then you're met with a sudden kick of laterals as the track itself twists from being inverted to the right way up. It's hard to tell what is going on in this element as there's so much motion in every dimension, and you're being thrown around in every direction possible. The train then rises up, and with too much speed it whips around the outside of Raven turn. You are violently dragged down while being flung forwards and out of your seat. This element is so sudden that when cresting it, the forces become an aggressive jolt. You begin the element rotating forwards and exit rotating backwards, further adding to how disorienting this section of the coaster is. Before you even have time to process what is occurring, you're lying on your back and about to flip into one final inversion. This is very reminiscent of the fly to lie a couple elements prior, except on this you invert but the laterals are less noticeable. The train then shoots into the final brake run while the seats are still swaying, marking the end of this incredible coaster. When I was sitting on that brake run, I was trying to catch my breath and comprehend what just happened, as this ride is so insane. So, that was my best shot at describing this coaster, but really it is just a blur. For the duration of the layout, you can barely tell what is going on, as you're being thrown in every single direction and every kind of force is acting on your body. It's one of those coasters that you have to ride to begin to comprehend it. However, I do have one issue with this ride, and that is to do with the rotations itself. The rotation of the seats is far from smooth, and when rotating it feels like there are many smaller and more jolty mechanical rotations. This can be quite uncomfortable, and in my opinion it also took away from the out of control sensation this ride tries to create. To me the concept just felt incomplete, so while I was blown away by this coaster, I just ended up wanting more, and wanting the concept to be more developed. Thankfully S&S did go on to improve upon this concept as they built both Egenike and Anaconda, which both have amazing reputations and seem to remedy the problems of X2. Nonetheless, this is a fantastic coaster and it definitely deserves the high praise it receives. So now there's a question of whether this ride was worth it, not only for the remarkable cost of development and construction, but also the toll it had on the industry. The coaster put Arrow out of business at what was a significant time of improvement for them. At this point Arrow was using computer aided design, and with the help of a new engineering team, including Alan Schilke, they were producing higher quality coasters, which were catching up with their counterparts Intamin and B&M. Furthermore, Arrow was beginning to develop more unique concepts, namely the 4D coasters, but other ideas such as the thrilling suspended coaster were being implemented. On the other hand, this could be viewed as a natural progression for the industry, as while they had made advancements, Arrow was lagging behind its competitors. Furthermore, most of the negative impacts were lessened by the fact that S&S had acquired most of Arrow's assets, allowing the company to continue Arrow's legacy. Arrow's failings had doomed them, and their overdue innovation came at a huge cost, which caused them to go out of business, and I would say that going out with a legendary coaster such as X2 is much better than slowly dying off, which they could have done otherwise. So I would say even with the changes in the industry it caused, X2 was the right choice for Arrow and Six Flags Magic Mountain. To this day, X2 is one of the most popular coasters in the world, and I can definitely understand the hype for it. Despite this, there are some shortcomings, which is natural of a prototype. So taking into account all of the negatives and positives, I'd give X2 an overall score of 92 out of 100. So, comment your thoughts on X2 down below, and subscribe for more roller coaster based content.